I love this. I love this because bell hooks is so significant to me. And Lee Ray Costa, who we were with the other day. Okay, this can go back in my pocket.
I mean, she's been to the shop twice, but I know your stories with her. Yeah.
Bell Hooks continues to inform my work intellectually, emotionally, and spiritually in profound ways, as she has for the last couple of decades. Limiting the work we do to only fighting pipelines is short sighted and profoundly inadequate. Intersectionality is more than a buzzword or academic speak, it's real, it's love. Love that is not throttled by or misinterpreted as abuse, or vice versa. Broadening the scope, though, is overwhelming. Whether we refer to the overarching climate emergency or the white supremacist capitalist patriarchy, it's a lot to resist and requires so many solutions. Bell says, I begin to use the phrase in my work, white supremacist capitalist patriarchy, because I wanted to have some language that would actually remind us continually of the interlocking systems of domination that define our reality, and not to just have one thing be like, gender is the more important issue, race is the important issue. But for me, the use of that particular jargonistic phrase was a sort of shortcut way of saying all of these things actually are functioning simultaneously at all times in our lives, and that if I really want to understand what's happening to me right now at this moment in my life as a Black female of a certain age group, I won't be able to understand it if I'm only looking through the lens of race. I won't be able to understand it if I'm only looking through the lens of gender. I won't be able to understand it if I'm only looking at how white people see me. To me, an important breakthrough I felt in my work and that of others was the call to use the term white supremacy over racism, because racism in and of itself didn't really allow for a discourse of colonization and decolonization, the recognition of the internalized racism within people of color, and it was always, in a sense, keeping things at the level at which whiteness and white people remained at the center of the discussion. In my classroom, I might say to students that that when we use the term white supremacy, it doesn't just evoke white people, it evokes a political world that we can all frame ourselves in relationship to. And so for me, those words were very much about the constant reminder, one of institutional construct, that we're not talking about personal construct in the sense of, how do you feel about me as a woman? Or how do you feel about me as a Black person? We have to problemize nationalism beyond race in all kinds of ways that I think there's a tremendous reluctance to have a more complex accounting of identity. End quote. To begin with, I have often used the term imperialist white supremacist capitalist patriarchy to describe interlocking political systems that are the foundations of our nation's politics. But imperialism is so abstract that I'm not sure it gets people's attention. And ultimately, a bunch of big words, even if they accurately describe the situation we're currently within, do not help us as much as the actual stories. Exploring colonialism versus imperialism helps me some. I shove new terms down my own throat, choking on description. Then I think of Red Terry in her kitchen, pouring me another glass of sweet tea while I read her a poem about Langa. You're very dramatic, she says, lighting a cigarette. And yes, I suppose the poem I shared that day could be called dramatic or sentimental, once described to me in an academic context as being overly generous. Maybe it's the part about having blood and muscle under my fingernails.